my narrative arc in terms of theory of change has gone from reading a bunch of social movement literature and a lot of network science in the 2000s and deciding that the way to change the world was essentially through building movement power, right? So you can think about my background is in economics and math. My mom was a math teacher. I was a math student all the way until college, and then actually stopped taking math in college, partly because my mom had done such a good job of teaching me math that I knew all the college math by the time I got to college. But I've always thought about things in kind of mathematical terms. And so my goal was increasing the number of activists multiplied by their commitment. That's all I thought about. I thought this is the key. If we just increase the number of
Right.
activists
Right.
times the commitment of the individual activists, which can be measured many different ways by the amount of time they're willing to spend, amount of money they're willing to spend, how much they're willing to risk. But that's the essential formula for social change. Still think there's a lot of truth to that, but I think the lesson I learned over the last 10 years that shifted me towards the simple heart was that it's not just about the number of activists times their commitment, it's about their ability to cooperate with each other. That the fundamental atom of the social movement, if you think about what is like the basic building block we're trying to build this powerful movement from, isn't actually the individual activists, it's the relationship between two activists, right? Because there's something about the shared knowledge and capacity of two people that is more than some of its individual parts. So two, five, 10, 100, 1,000 people working
Yeah.
together, especially if they're working together cooperatively, can just do things that far beyond what each of them as individuals can do if they're working in separate ways at cross purposes. And I still think there's truth to that theory of change too, that we should basically be maximizing the number of high quality relationships in the movement. Um, the thing that AI research has kind of shifted me on to some degree, although I still think those two theories of change are highly relevant to the work I'm doing, is that AI research thinks about problems in a more fundamental way than even the physical universe, right? So this is going to get very philosophical, but essentially everything in the universe is just data. It's just information, right? You can think about every atom in the universe as a number of data points about the charge of the various subatomic particles, the alignment, and so on. And there's information that's organized in various ways. And our goal as one form of combination of these sets of informational particles is to change the informational state of the universe towards the state that we'd like, right? Um, and I think the way you get there essentially is through intelligence by increasing your problem solving capacity. Essentially, what we have to do as animal rights activists is solve one big problem, how to get people to stop hurting animals, but also solve a number of smaller problems on the way towards that journey. And fundamentally, the way we achieve better problem solving is by increasing our intelligence. And so I've been thinking recently about how do we just build a more intelligent movement, which isn't just about increasing the knowledge of each individual activist. It's about creating structures and platforms and resources where our shared knowledge can bloom. So, for example, why don't we have like a Wikipedia of all the best practices in the animal rights movement? Why don't we have an incubator where some of the most wise figures in the animal rights movement, so for example, Mariann Sullivan in the law, who's no, I'm serious. I mean, like everyone should read the Fox Guard and the Hen House, this piece that you wrote with David Wilson 20 or so years
A
ago,
million
right?
years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
Sadly,
but it's
still fairly relevant.
still very
Not much
relevant.
has
But
changed.
there's so much trying to reinvent the wheel. And sometimes you should reinvent the wheel, but you should know about the wheel first. You're not going to be able to reinvent it well if you don't have the foundational knowledge. And this is what the university system is based on. This is what startup incubators do, right? And if you look at the history of Western civilization, why did Western civilization become dominant? It was partly because of the university system, because we brought together large numbers of experts and we trained future generations with the knowledge they were accumulating. And that's how knowledge built over time. So maybe we need a university for animal rights activists, or maybe we need departments in universities where we're trying to build knowledge over time that can be sustained not just over a 1 or 5 or 10-year time period, but over many decades or even centuries. So I guess the most recent theory of change I've been playing with, and I wrote a piece on my blog called "What We Can Learn from AI Research," because a lot of what AI research is about is about this. It's about shifting beyond trying to find the right tactic for a specific problem and rather moving towards just building a better general intelligence. If anyone's read the term artificial general intelligence, AGI, this is all the rage in AI research. And the reason it's important is because the theory behind AI research is that we have to generalize our intelligence so it can be deployed for a variety of different problems, every problem in the universe, for us to be able to really exponentially increase the power of artificial intelligence. But that's true of social intelligence. That's true of movement intelligence as well. If we actually want to exponentially amplify our ability to solve problems, we need to figure out a way to build a more general intelligence that accumulates over time. So that's what I've been thinking about recently, but I don't have a lot of specific answers.
Oh, that was very general. I have to admit, but I feel like when I started in the movement, the fight was really for moral philosophy, for a theory
Hmm.
that would underlie, that because people actually nobody actually was thinking about animals, and there was a lot of work was done on that. And then we realized, or people in the movement realized, that that was not enough to actually change behavior. And then I think that and this is certainly something that you've participated in, is that we to some extent moved on from just the theory to the facts, like the fight for truth and to transparency, the idea that people really didn't know, and they really didn't, what was happening to animals. They didn't know how bad this was. I mean, they didn't know what the situation was. We knew they didn't know. And trying to find ways to convey that became really essential, when we started with undercover investigations and
Hmm.
the whole movement leading, of course, to right to rescue cases and everything. We believe that if everybody knew what was happening to animals, that would do it. But that hasn't done it. And it
Yeah.
feels like you're kind of reaching for the next step, like this knowledge base that goes beyond just being exposed to truth, but somehow understanding it better. Does that
Yeah.
or
I think human civilization is more like the Titanic than we like to think, and that it's this huge
it's
structure
a
that kind of plugs
cheerful
along.
cheerful metaphor.
Yeah, it's a cheerful metaphor, and yeah, but I think it's a hopeful one too, because I think with the benefit of history and hindsight, we can see the problems that the Titanic had that could be fixed, right? And this is why we use it as a metaphor. We can't be like the Titanic where you just keep plugging along and not realizing there's an iceberg ahead. Let's change course. And and so I think, even with the Titanic, I mean, there was actually quite a bit of evidence that they were going to hit an iceberg. There's quite a bit of evidence that they needed more life rafts that should have been in place to save the people who ultimately died. And again, the information wasn't enough. There needed to be kind of
Yeah,
a political economy, a political
yeah.
theory about how do we actually implement this? How do we, I mean, everyone agrees that let's not run to this iceberg and drown everyone on this massive luxury liner. But how do we convince the appropriate stakeholders and convince the masses, convince whoever needs to be convinced in order to turn this ship around? And I think that's kind of the problem we're facing today. I mean, overwhelmingly, I think the public generally supports stopping animal cruelty. I mean, even with farm animals.
Everybody
Yeah.
agrees with us. I mean, really,
Yeah.
everybody agrees with us.
But the problem is, it's hard to turn a very, very large ship, and human civilization is a massive ship that's very hard to shift. But I think we're figuring it out, and I don't even mean just for animal rights. I mean, I think if you look at moral progress over the last 200 years, it's accelerating. And the anti-slavery movement took hundreds of years from the first powerful writings. In the 1600s and 1700s, you have people like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill writing tracks like on liberty, saying, look, I mean, liberty matters, and we can't just enslave people because they have a different skin color. That took hundreds of years. Then you have the civil rights movement trying to end segregation. That takes, maybe a century between the end of slavery to the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And then you have the gay rights movement, which, really only takes a few decades. And so I think a lot of sociologists and political scientists who study social change see a compressing schedule where things that used to take centuries are now taking decades.
Yeah.
And I think the same will be true of animals. I mean, the animal rights movement is a very young movement, and the amount of progress we're making. I mean, the fact that RFK Jr. was on national television a couple of days ago saying we need to end animal experiments because the way you test a humane society is by its treatment of animals. I mean, this is something animal rights activists say. And now the most important person on the entire planet in the domain of animal experimentation is just saying exactly the same thing. So let's count the victories we have. And for sure, let's not get complacent and say, rest on our laurels, but let's also not be defeatist and say we haven't achieved anything, but we've achieved incredible progress over the last
It's
half
very
century.
different. It's very different than the way it used to be. It's just that we
Yeah.
haven't seen the big change, but the landscape is very different than it used to be. And I think that what you're saying too, and citing all of those movements, like it also really emphasizes the huge, unbelievable importance of people like you and like many of our listeners who see it ahead of other people,
Hmm.
even though even though it's obvious to other people, like they don't see it in a way that leads to change. We don't quite understand what that's all about. But the importance in all of those movements of the people who made something happen, who devoted their lives to change, who saw it and devoted their lives to changing it, that was crucial in all of those movements. So everybody who wakes up ahead of time has a huge responsibility because of that, to to work for change.